The diner smelled of burnt coffee and regret, the kind that lingers in the air when secrets are about to spill. I sat across from Jake, his hands shaking as he pushed a crumpled napkin toward me, his eyes begging for something I didn't yet understand. "Elliot, you're the only one I trust with this," he whispered, and I felt the weight of his words like a stone in my chest. It was a humid summer evening in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, the kind where the air clung to your skin and made every decision feel heavier. Jake and I had been friends since high school, bonded over late-night talks about dreams too big for our small town. He was the golden boy quarterback, prom king, the guy everyone loved. I was the quiet one, always sketching in the margins of my notebooks, content to stay in his shadow. But that night in the diner, something shifted. Jake's usual confidence was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate edge I'd never seen before. "My dad's in trouble," he said, voice low, barely audible over the hum of the jukebox. "He's not himself. I need you to check on him. Elliot, please." I leaned back, my hoodie sticking to the vinyl booth. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Debt, illness, an affair. Jake's dad, Mr. Harper Tom to the adults, was a pillar of Willow Creek. A high school history teacher, volunteer firefighter, the kind of guy who coached Little League and never missed a Sunday sermon. The idea of him in trouble felt like a crack in the town's foundation. "It's complicated," Jake said, rubbing his temples. "He's been distant. Mom says he's working late, but I saw him at the old mill last week. Just standing there, staring at nothing. I think he's hiding something." I frowned. The old mill was a relic, abandoned since the 80s, a place kids dared each other to sneak into. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not you or your mom?" Jake's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something flicker: fear, maybe, or shame. "Because you're good at seeing things others don't. You notice stuff, Elliot. You always have." He wasn't wrong. Growing up gay in a town like Willow Creek, you learn to read people, to spot the subtle signs of judgment or acceptance. I'd spent years watching faces, decoding glances, knowing when to hide and when to stand my ground. But this felt bigger than me. "Fine," I said finally. "I'll check on him. But you owe me, Jake." He gave a weak smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You have no idea." The next morning, I drove to the Harper house, a tidy colonial on Maple Street with a wraparound porch and a flagpole out front. Tom was in the garage, tinkering with an old radio, his broad shoulders hunched under a faded flannel. He was 50, but looked older that day, his graying hair disheveled, his jaw tight. When he saw me, his face softened, but only for a second. "Elliot," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Jake send you." I nodded, leaning against the workbench. "He's worried about you. Said you've been off." Tom laughed, but it was hollow. Kids got a vivid imagination. "I'm fine." I didn't buy it. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was a tremor in his hands he couldn't quite hide. I glanced around the garage tools neatly hung, a stack of history books on a shelf, a photo of Jake's mom, Linda, pinned to a corkboard. Everything screamed normal, but something felt wrong. Jake mentioned the mill. I said, testing the waters. Tom froze, the rag slipping from his fingers. He told you that. His voice was sharp, almost accusatory. Yeah, I said, holding his gaze. What's going on, Mr. Harper? He turned away, busying himself with the radio again. Nothing you need to worry about, Elliot. Just life. It gets messy sometimes. I wanted to push, but the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't anger or defiance, it was fear. Raw, unguarded fear. I'd seen that look before. In the mirror. Back when I was 16 and terrified to tell anyone who I really was. All right, I said, stepping back. But if you need to talk, I'm here. He nodded, but he didn't look at me. As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into something I wasn't ready for. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jake's plea, Tom's evasiveness, it all gnawed at me. Around midnight, I grabbed my keys and drove to the mill. The building loomed against the moonlit sky, its windows dark and jagged like broken teeth. I parked a ways off and approached on foot, my sneakers crunching on gravel. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of rust. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, catching on rusted machinery and graffiti-covered walls. Then I heard a low, muffled sound, like someone crying. I followed the noise to a corner of the mill, where Tom sat on the floor, his back against a crumbling wall. He didn't see me at first, his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. Next to him was a bottle of whiskey, half empty, and a crumpled letter. Mr. Harper, I said softly. His head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. Elliot, what the hell are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, crouching beside him. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out as a sob. You shouldn't be here. This isn't your problem. Then whose is it? I asked, my voice gentler than I meant it to be. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something broke. Mine, he whispered. It's always been mine. Tom's words hung in the air, heavy with a truth I couldn't yet grasp. The mill's shadows seemed to close in around us, the silence broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere in the dark. I sat beside him, the cold concrete biting through my jeans, waiting for him to say more. He didn't. Instead, he grabbed the whiskey bottle and took a long swig, his hands trembling. The letter beside him caught my eye-yellowed paper, creased like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. I didn't reach for it, but I couldn't stop staring. Elliot, he said finally, his voice rough. You ever feel like you're living someone else's life? I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I admitted. More than you'd think. He nodded, like he'd expected that answer. I've been living a lie for 30 years. And I'm so damn tired. My heart thudded. I wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his eyes told me to wait. He took another drink, then handed me the letter. Read it, he said. But don't hate me. I unfolded the paper, my fingers brushing against the worn edges. It was dated 1995, written in a tight, careful script. Dear Tom, I know you're scared. I am too. But I can't keep pretending I don't love you. Meet me at the mill tonight. We'll figure this out together. Michael. The name hit me like a punch. Michael. I knew that name. Michael Callahan. Tom's best friend from high school. The one who'd left Willow Creek right after graduation and never came back. The town still whispered about him sometimes. The guy who'd been too bright for this place. Who'd moved to San Francisco and lived openly as a gay man. I looked at Tom. My mouth dry. You and Michael. He nodded, staring at the floor. We were kids. Stupid, reckless kids. I loved him. Elliot. But I couldn't. I couldn't be that. Not here. I swallowed hard, the weight of his confession settling over me. Tom Harper, the man who'd taught me about the Civil War, who'd cheered at every one of Jake's games, had been carrying this secret his whole life. What happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He laughed, bitter and broken. I chose the easy way out. Married Linda. Had Jake. Built this perfect little life. But it's not mine. It's never been mine. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug him, to tell him it was okay. But another part was reeling. Jake had asked me to help his dad. But this was a storm I hadn't seen coming. Why now? I asked. Why are you telling me this? Tom's eyes met mine. And for the first time, they were clear. Because you're like me. Elliot. You know what it's like to hide. My breath caught. I'd come out to Jake and a few friends in college. But I'd never told Tom. Had he seen it in me all along? The thought made my chest ache. I don't know how to fix this, he said, his voice cracking. I don't know how to tell Linda, or Jake, or anyone. But I can't keep pretending. I reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to do it alone, I said. I'll help you. He looked at me, tears streaking his face. And for a moment, I saw the boy he'd been scared. In love. Trapped by a town that wouldn't let him be himself. The next few days were a blur. I kept Tom's secret, but it felt like carrying a live grenade. Jake called me constantly, asking if I'd found anything out. And I dodged his questions with vague promises to keep looking. I couldn't tell him not yet. Tom needed time, and I needed to figure out how to help him without tearing his family apart. I started meeting Tom at the mill every night. It became our sanctuary, a place where he could talk without fear of being overheard. He told me about Michael, about stolen moments in the woods, about the night they'd almost run away together. He told me about the guilt that had eaten at him for decades, the fear that Linda would hate him, that Jake would never forgive him. You're brave. You know, he said one night, as we sat on the mill's rusted stairs. Living your truth. I wish I'd had that courage. I shook my head. It's not courage. It's just surviving. You're still here, Tom. That's something. He smiled, but it was sad. I don't know how to do this, Elliot. I don't know how to be honest without hurting everyone I love. I didn't have an answer. All I could do was listen, and hope that was enough. The mill became our nightly ritual, a fragile bubble where Tom could breathe. Each confession chipped away at the walls he'd built, but it also deepened the pit in my stomach. I was helping him, but at what cost? Jake's texts grew more insistent. His voice edged with frustration. Elliot, what's going on? You're dodging me. I hated lying to him. But Tom wasn't ready to face his son, and I wasn't sure I was ready to be the one who broke the news. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the mill's broken windows orange, Tom handed me a photo. It was old, the edges curling, showing two teenage boys laughing by a river. One was clearly Tom's same broad shoulders, same crooked smile. The other, with sharp cheekbones and a mischievous grin, had to be Michael. We were 17, Tom said, his voice soft. That was the summer before everything changed. Before I got scared. I traced the photo with my thumb, imagining the weight of that moment. Do you ever think about finding him? I asked. Tom's face tightened. Every day? But he's got a life now. A partner. A career. What right do I have to drag him back into this mess? Maybe he'd want to know you're finally free, I said, surprising myself with the words. He looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes. But it faded quickly. Free. I'm not free. Elliot. I'm married. I have a son. A life. A life you're not living, I said, sharper than I meant. You can't keep doing this to yourself. Or to Linda. He flinched, and I regretted my tone. But I wasn't wrong. Linda deserved the truth, even if it hurt. Jake deserved it too. And Tom deserved a chance to live for himself, not for the expectations of Willow Creek. I know, he whispered. But how do you tell the woman you've loved for 25 years that you've been lying to her? That you're not the man she thinks you are? I didn't have an answer. I was 25. Single. Still figuring out my own place in the world. But I knew what it was like to hide. To feel like your truth could burn everything down. Let's start small, I said. Write her a letter. Don't send it yet, just write it. Get it out. He nodded, but his hands shook as he pulled a notebook from his bag. We sat in silence as he wrote, the scratch of his pen echoing in the empty mill. When he finished, he didn't show me the letter, but he looked lighter, like he'd shed a layer of guilt. The next day, I met Jake at the diner again. He looked worse than before, bags under his eyes, his usual charm replaced by a restless energy. Elliot, talk to me, he said, slamming his coffee mug down. What's going on with my dad? I hesitated, my mind racing for a lie that wouldn't unravel everything. He's struggling, I said finally. But he's okay. I'm keeping an eye on him. Jake's jaw tightened. Struggling with what? Money. Work. Mom. It's not that simple, I said, hating how vague I sounded. Just give him some time. Jake. He leaned forward, his voice low. You're my best friend. Elliot. Don't keep me in the dark. The words cut deep. Jake had been there for me when I came out. When my dad called me a disappointment. When I thought I'd never belong anywhere. Lying to him felt like betraying everything we'd built. But Tom's secret wasn't mine to tell. I'm not, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm trying to help. Trust me. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. As I left the diner, I felt the grenade in my chest tick closer to detonation. That night, Tom showed me the letter he'd written to Linda. It was raw, messy, full of love and regret. He didn't hold back. Every word bled with the truth he'd buried for decades. I don't know if I can give it to her, he said, his voice trembling. You don't have to yet, I said. But writing it's a start. You're being honest with yourself. He smiled. A real one this time. You're a good kid, Elliot. Better than I deserve. I shook my head. You deserve more than you think. As we left the mill, I noticed a car parked across the street. Headlights off. My stomach dropped. Was it Jake? Had he followed me? I didn't say anything to Tom, but the unease lingered long after we parted ways. The car was gone by the time I reached my truck, but the unease clung to me like damp clothes. I drove home with the radio off, my mind replaying the image of those headlights, the silhouette of someone watching. Was it Jake? Or just my paranoia? I couldn't shake the feeling that the fragile balance I was trying to maintain was about to collapse. The next evening, Tom was waiting at the mill, his face pale. Linda knows something's wrong, he said before I could even sit down. She asked me last night why I'm always gone. I couldn't look her in the eye. Elliot. I sat beside him, the air thick with dust and tension. Did you tell her anything? He shook his head. I couldn't. I just froze. She thinks I'm cheating. The word hung between us, sharp and ugly. I wanted to say she wasn't entirely wrong, not in the way she thought, but in the way Tom had been unfaithful to himself. Instead, I asked, what do you want to do? He ran a hand through his graying hair. I want to tell her. I do. But every time I try, I see her face, and I think about Jake. And I can't. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees. You're not protecting them by hiding, Tom. You're just delaying the pain. For everyone. His eyes searched mine, desperate for an answer I didn't have. How did you do it? He asked. When you told your dad, how did you find the words? I laughed. A bitter sound. I didn't. I blurted it out in the middle of an argument, and he hasn't spoken to me since. Not exactly a success story. Tom's face softened. I'm sorry, Elliot. I didn't know it was that bad. I shrugged, pushing down the ache. It's fine. Point is, there's no perfect way to do this. You just have to decide what's worse, living a lie or facing the truth. He nodded, but the fear in his eyes hadn't faded. We sat in silence for a while, the mill's shadows stretching longer as the night deepened. Finally, he pulled out the letter to Linda and handed it to me. Keep this, he said, in case I chicken out. I took it, the weight of it heavier than paper should be. You won't, I said, hoping I sounded more certain than I felt. The next morning, Jake cornered me outside the hardware store. His eyes were wild, his voice low and dangerous. You're lying to me. Elliot, I saw you at the mill last night. With my dad. My stomach dropped. So it was him. Jake. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He snapped, stepping closer. You're sneaking around with my dad. And you expect me to just sit here and trust you. I held up my hands, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm helping him, like you asked. But it's his story to tell, not mine. Jake's fists clenched, and for a moment, I thought he might hit me. You're my best friend, he said, his voice breaking. Why are you shutting me out? The hurt in his eyes was like a knife. I wanted to tell him everything, to ease the betrayal he felt. But I couldn't betray Tom's trust either. Jake, please, I said. Just give me a little time. He shook his head, backing away. You're choosing him over me. Fine. Before I could stop him, he stormed off, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. That night, Tom didn't show at the mill. I waited for an hour. My texts unanswered. My calls going to voicemail. Panic crept in, cold and sharp. Had he told Linda? Had Jake confronted him? I drove to the Harper house, my heart pounding. The lights were on, but the house was quiet. Too quiet. I knocked, and Linda answered, her face pale, her eyes red. Elliot, she said, her voice flat. What are you doing here? Is Tom okay? I asked, my throat tight. She stared at me, and I saw the moment she realized I knew something she didn't. He's gone, she said. Left a note saying he needed space. What do you know? Elliot. I froze, the letter in my pocket feeling like a lead weight. I'm just worried about him, I stammered. Her eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me. You've been meeting him, haven't you? I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. I was trying to help. Help with what? She demanded, her voice rising. I took a deep breath, my mind screaming to protect Tom's secret. But the look in Linda's eyes, the pain, the confusion made me realize she deserved better than half-truths. Linda, I said softly, you need to talk to Tom. There's something he needs to tell you himself. Linda's eyes bored into me, searching for answers I couldn't give. The porch light cast harsh shadows on her face, deepening the lines of worry etched there. I wanted to hand her the letter, to let Tom's words speak for him, but it felt like a betrayal. Instead, I mumbled an apology and left, the weight of her gaze following me to my truck. I drove to the mill, hoping Tom was there, but it was empty, the silence louder than ever. My phone buzzed. Jake. Again. Where's my dad? What did you do? The accusation stung, but I couldn't blame him. I'd been caught in the middle of a truth too big for any of us to handle. I texted Tom one last time. Where are you? Linda's worried. Jake's pissed. Talk to me. No response. I sat in my truck, the letter in my hands, debating whether to read it again. I didn't. It wasn't mine to open anymore. The next day, I found Tom at the diner, sitting in the same booth where Jake had first asked for my help. He looked like he hadn't slept, his flannel wrinkled, his eyes hollow. I slid into the seat across from him, my heart racing. "You scared the hell out of me," I said, keeping my voice low. "Where'd you go?" He didn't look up, just stirred his coffee. "I drove to Pittsburgh. Thought about leaving for good. But I couldn't." "Why not?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Jake," he said simply. "Linda. They deserve better than me running away." I leaned forward, my hands clasped tight. "Then tell them. Tom, you can't keep running from this." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I know. I'm going to. Tonight." My stomach twisted. "You sure you're ready?" "No," he said with a weak smile. "But I'm tired of being a coward." I reached across the table, squeezing his arm. "You're not a coward. You're just human." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of resolve. "Thanks, Elliot, for everything." That evening, I waited at the mill, my nerves on edge. Tom had asked me to be there after he talked to Linda, in case he needed to talk. I paced the dusty floor, checking my phone every few minutes. No word from Tom. No word from Jake. The silence was suffocating. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Meet me at the house. Now." My heart sank. I drove to the Harper house, the streets of Willow Creek blurring past. When I pulled up, Jake was on the porch, his face a storm of anger and hurt. Linda was inside, her silhouette visible through the window, sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. "What happened?" I asked, stepping onto the porch. Jake's voice was low, shaking. He told her. He told her everything. About Michael. About being gay. I froze, my breath catching. How'd she take it? Jake laughed. A bitter sound. "How do you think?" "She's devastated. 25 years. Elliot." She gave him 25 years. And it was all a lie. "It wasn't a lie," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "He loves her. He loves you. He just couldn't love himself." Jake's eyes flashed. "Don't defend him. Not to me." "I'm not defending him," I said, stepping closer. "I'm trying to make you see he's hurting too. He's been carrying this his whole life. Jake. He didn't choose this." Jake's fists clenched, but he didn't swing. "And you knew," he said, his voice breaking. "You knew, and you didn't tell me." "I couldn't," I said, my throat tight. It wasn't my truth to tell. He stared at me, his eyes wet with tears. "I trusted you, Elliot. I asked you to help him. Not this." Before I could respond, the door opened, and Tom stepped out. His face was ashen, his hands shaking. "Jake," he said, his voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." Jake turned away, his shoulders rigid. "Don't. Just don't." Tom looked at me, his eyes pleading for help. But I didn't know what to do. The family I'd known my whole life was fracturing, and I was standing at the fault line. The air on the porch was thick with unspoken words, the kind that cut deeper than any shout. Jake's back was to Tom, his hands gripping the railing so tightly I thought it might splinter. Tom stood frozen, his apology hanging unanswered between them. I wanted to fix this, to stitch their family back together, but I was out of my depth. "Jake," I said softly, stepping forward. "He's still your dad." Jake whirled on me, his eyes blazing. "Don't tell me who he is. You don't get it. Elliot, you don't have a family to lose." The words hit like a slap. He wasn't wrong. Me dad had cut me out years ago, and my mom was a ghost who called twice a year. But that didn't make this hurt less. "Jake," Tom said, his voice breaking, "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" Jake snapped, turning to face him. "Why did you let us believe you were someone you're not?" Tom's shoulders sagged. "Because I thought it was the right thing. I thought I could be the man you needed." Jake's laugh was bitter. "You thought wrong." He stormed past us, his footsteps echoing down the street. I started to go after him, but Tom grabbed my arm. "Let him go," he said, his voice hollow. "He needs time." I looked at him, at the man who'd been a father figure to me when my own dad turned away. "What about you?" I asked. "What do you need?" He didn't answer, just walked back inside, leaving me alone on the porch. Through the window, I saw Linda still at the table, her face buried in her hands. I wanted to go to her, to say something. But what could I say? I'd help Tom find the courage to be honest. But at what cost? The next few days were a haze of tension. Jake stopped answering my calls, and Tom kept to himself, staying at a motel on the edge of town. I visited Linda, bringing her coffee and a lame excuse about checking in. She was polite but distant, her eyes red from crying. "He's leaving," she told me one morning, her voice flat. "He says he needs to find himself. After all these years, he's choosing himself over us." I wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't that simple, but I saw the pain in her eyes. To her, it was betrayal, pure and simple. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling useless. She shook her head. "You tried to help. I know that. But this is bigger than you." I left her house feeling like I'd failed everyone. Jake, Linda, Tom, even myself. I'd wanted to help, but all I'd done was light the match that burned their family down. One night, I found Tom at the mill again, sitting in our usual spot. He looked older, worn down by the weight of his choices. I told Jake I'm moving to Pittsburgh, he said as I sat beside him. "There's a community there. People who understand." I nodded, my throat tight. "That's good, Tom. You need to be somewhere you can be yourself." He looked at me, his eyes searching. Did I do the right thing? Elliot, telling the truth. I thought about Jake's anger, Linda's pain, the fractured pieces of their family. But I also thought about the boy in that photo by the river, the one who'd loved Michael and lost him to fear. "Yeah," I said finally. "It hurts like hell, but it was the right thing." He smiled, A small, sad thing. You're a good man. Elliot. Better than me. I shook my head. I'm just trying to do what's right. Like you. We sat in silence, the mill's shadows wrapping around us like a cocoon. For the first time, I felt like we were equals, not a kid and his best friend's dad, but two people who'd fought the same battles and come out scarred but standing. Weeks passed, and Willow Creek felt like a town holding its breath. Tom moved to Pittsburgh, renting a small apartment near a community center for LGBTQ folks. He sent me texts, sometimes short updates about therapy, about meeting people who made him feel seen. But Jake and Linda stayed silent. They're paint a wall I couldn't climb. I tried reaching out to Jake, leaving voicemails he never returned. I saw him once at the diner, sitting alone. But when he saw me, he left without a word. The rejection stung, but I couldn't blame him. I'd been the one to help his dad unravel their family, even if it wasn't my intent. One afternoon, Linda called me. Her voice was steady, but there was a fragility to it, like glass about to crack. Elliot, can you come over? I need to talk. I drove to the Harper house, my heart heavy. Linda was in the kitchen, a box of Tom's things on the table, books, photos, his old flannel. I'm packing up his stuff, she said, her hands busy but her eyes distant. I can't look at it anymore. I sat across from her, unsure what to say. I'm sorry, Linda. I never meant for this to happen. She looked at me, her expression softening. I know. And I don't blame you. Elliot, you were trying to help Tom. I wish he'd told me sooner. I nodded, the letter still in my jacket pocket, unopened since Tom gave it to me. He loves you, I said. He always will. But he couldn't keep pretending. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. I loved him too, but I don't know how to forgive him for lying all those years. You don't have to forgive him, I said. Not yet. Just let yourself feel what you feel. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You're a good friend to him. And to Jake. Don't give up on my boy. Okay. I promised I wouldn't. But as I left, I wondered if Jake would ever let me back in. A month later, I got a call from Tom. His voice was brighter, like a weight had lifted. I found Michael, he said, the words tumbling out. He's in Pittsburgh. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow. My heart leapt. That's amazing. Tom, how do you feel? Terrified, he admitted, laughing, but hopeful, for the first time in years. I smiled, picturing the boy from the photo, finally getting a chance to be himself. You deserve this, I said. Go be happy. He thanked me, and when we hung up, I felt a flicker of peace. Tom was finding his way, even if it meant leaving pieces of his old life behind. Then came the day I'd been dreading. Jake texted me. A single line, meet me at the mill. I drove there, my stomach in knots. He was waiting inside, leaning against a rusted beam, his face unreadable. I talked to Dad, he said as I approached. He told me about Michael. About everything. I nodded. bracing myself. And he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm still mad. But I get it. I think. Why he couldn't tell me. Why he needed you. I stepped closer, hope flickering. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. I was just trying to help him. I know, he said, his voice softer. I wish you'd told me. I couldn't, I said, echoing my words from weeks ago. It wasn't my truth to tell. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. I'm sorry for what I said. About you not having a family. That was low. It's okay, I said, though it still stung. You were hurting. We stood there, the mill's silence wrapping around us. Then Jake stepped forward and hugged me, tight and fierce. You're still my best friend, he whispered. Don't forget that. Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged him back. Never. The mill felt different that night. Less like a hiding place and more like a bridge between what was and what could be. Jake and I sat on the rusted stairs, sharing a quiet that didn't need words. For the first time in months, I felt like we were us again, two friends who'd weathered a storm and come out stronger. Dad's doing okay, Jake said, breaking the silence. He called me yesterday. Said he's happy in Pittsburgh. Happier than he's been in years. I smiled, relief washing over me. That's good to hear. Jake nodded, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. Mom's struggling, but she's trying. She started therapy. Says it helps. And you? I asked, glancing at him. He shrugged, but his eyes were clear. I'm getting there. It's weird. You know, knowing my dad's someone I never really knew. But I still love him. That's what matters, I said. He loves you too. Jake looked at me, a small smile tugging at his lips. You're pretty good at this. You know, helping people through their messes. I laughed, shaking my head. I don't know about that. Listen. That's enough, he said, and I felt the truth of it in my bones. A few weeks later, I visited Tom in Pittsburgh. His apartment was small but warm, filled with books and photos of Jake and Linda. He looked different, lighter, like he'd finally exhaled after holding his breath for decades. I met Michael, he said, his eyes bright. We're taking it slow, but it feels right. I grinned, clapping him on the shoulder. I'm happy for you, Tom. Really. He pulled me into a hug, his voice thick. I couldn't have done this without you, Elliot. You gave me the courage to be honest. I shook my head. You had it in you all along. I just nudged you. As I left, I saw a photo on his shelf, the one of him and Michael by the river, now framed beside a new one of Tom smiling at a pride event. A rainbow flag draped over his shoulders. It was proof that truth, however painful, could lead to something beautiful. Back in Willow Creek, life settled into a new rhythm. Linda started volunteering at the community center, finding purpose in helping others. Jake and I rebuilt our friendship, one coffee at the diner at a time. And I started sketching again, filling my notebooks with faces and moments. Tom's smile, Jake's laugh, Linda's quiet strength. One evening, as I sat in the diner, Jake slid into the booth across from me, his old grin back. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked. I leaned back, considering. "Sometimes. But there's something about Willow Creek. It's home. You know." He nodded, his eyes warm. "Yeah. It's messed up, but it's ours." We laughed, and for a moment, the world felt right. I'd come to help a friend's dad, not knowing I'd unravel a family or that I'd help them find their way back to each other. Tom's truth had broken things, but it had also built something Nawa family redefined by honesty, love, and the courage to start again. As I drove home that night, the mill loomed in the distance. No longer a place of secrets, but a reminder of what it means to be human. To love, to hurt, to heal, and to keep going, no matter what.